Keeping It Young podcast is sponsored in part by TWR360.org, giving the world powerful Christian content in more than 100 languages. Visit TWR360.org, the global internet platform of Trans World Radio. Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethlie.
And we are the Youngs.
Welcome.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. Today is a special edition of the Keeping It Young podcast. It is Valentine's Day week.
Yay! Happy Love Day!
We love Valentine's Day.
Yes, we do.
This is a marriage and family podcast, and we've got to do a special Valentine's edition.
Yes, and normally we do a giveaway for Valentine's Day, but I am so sorry, listeners. Valentine's Day has literally sneaked up on us.
It just kind of came sneaking around the corner, and we were like, wait a minute.
Yes.
It's Valentine's Day. And we forgot to do our annual poetry contest, coffee date, giveaway.
Right.
So we'll have to wait till next year and pick it up. So our apologies. We totally forgot.
Or maybe we could do something for another holiday coming up, maybe Easter or
do an
something
Easter
during
date
the
giveaway.
Summer. Okay, Easter date sounds a little strange.
We could call it resurrection dating.
Normally Easter is just a family time to get together. So maybe we'll do something this summer.
Okay, maybe we will. Well, we're going to take today and just do a special edition of the Keeping It Young podcast. And we've entitled today's podcast, Inexpensive Ways to Celebrate Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things we've noticed is that the economy has affected us in a variety of ways.
Yes.
I suppose you've noticed, at least most of you I would think have, that it's more expensive to go to the grocery store now than it's been in a while.
Oh, my.
And it's crazy, isn't it?
The not happy place, Walmart. Just ringing up the groceries makes it more not happy.
I had several people, write about that.
Yes.
That is not your happy place. We've heard from several of you over these last few weeks. And so as we just get started today thinking about Valentine's Day, though, I thought it'd be a good thing to talk about just some ways our listening audience could celebrate inexpensively.
Yes.
And just maybe save yourself some money and yet honor love and the special occasion that is marriage and all of that.
Yes.
And so we've come up so far with 8 different ones. We may maybe off the cuff think of some others as we go through here.
All right.
And we're just going to jump right in. But to get us started, I made a list of questions to ask Bethlie. And so she just saw these just a moment ago. So they're not totally a surprise, but a little bit.
Yeah, mostly off the cuff.
Off the cuff. So the first question is, what was your favorite Valentine's Day experience when you were a little girl?
Oh, it would be hard for me to pin it down to just one because my family was very celebratory growing up. Now, we weren't lavish on Valentine's Day because, you feel like you just celebrated Christmas. Sure. And my birthday's in December too. So, and my siblings' birthdays are in December. So we had just had a whole bunch of celebrations, but my parents celebrated everything. So we had maybe a special Valentine's dinner, which usually would include some kind of pasta or one of our favorite foods. And then Mom would make a dessert also. But my dad always, we went to a Christian school, and our Christian school was part of our church, and Dad being the pastor, he would go out and he would get us special things and bring them to our classroom. So, in elementary school, you always have those Valentine's Day celebrations, parties where you decorate your little box and you give away all the little Valentines. Well, we would be doing that, and my father would walk in either with a huge card, or he would give us a stuffed animal, or maybe a cookie, a special decorated cookie, or maybe a balloon. Or as I got older, my father would deliver flowers to the school. So always loved Valentine's Day.
I could so see your daddy doing that.
Yes. And he was just, he's just a big teddy bear, and he just loved love, and he loved celebrating it. He loved us. He loved my mother and our family. And so he would make the most of it. It was
so there's
awesome,
just already a
awesome.
little idea for you dads, maybe take a little time to do something for your daughter.
Right.
And that's a great memory for Bethlie. I was thinking about that when I wrote down this question. I don't remember a great deal about Valentine's Day in the sense that our family didn't, celebrate hugely like your family did.
Right.
I think maybe the earliest memory I have of Valentine's Day was this awkwardness that I felt in elementary school when our teacher had us write Valentines to our classmates.
Oh.
And I just remember, reading them, "Be mine." And I was thinking, you could make that King James, "I am thine, be mine."
Did you think of that as a little boy?
I don't know if I did, but I did this morning.
I can imagine you thinking of that as a little boy.
When I was writing these things down. But I remember that was a little bit awkward for me. So just because of the way we celebrated it, Valentine's Day, it was just, one of those days are a little awkward. But the way Bethlie's family celebrated it made it very special and a great memory for her, even as a little girl. So moms and dads, there's a great lesson for us as parents. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how we celebrate. If you think of it as a, oh my word kind of thing, then probably your kids when they're married will think of it as an oh my word.
Right.
And so be wise about that. Here's another question though for you, and this may have already been answered, but what was your favorite memory of Valentine's Day as a teenager?
As a teenager, I would have to say also my father showing up at our Christian school, coming into my Christian school classroom with a rose or
did your Christian
a bouquet.
School have any special celebration, like a meal or a banquet or anything like that?
No, we had a junior senior banquet later in the spring, and that didn't come until your junior or senior year.
Okay, so that didn't count then.
No, and then our church had a sweethearts banquet that they did for the married couples or engaged couples could go to it. And so as a teenager, I usually got asked to babysit during that time, which I was always glad to do, loved children. But I would say it was just my dad showing up with that rose or that little bouquet of
really
flowers.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, then here's another question for you. This is our 29th Valentine's Day as a married couple.
Wow.
And 29 years we've been celebrating Valentine's Day. So what would you say, this is probably hard to answer in some sense, but what would you say is the most romantic Valentine's Day we've had in our married life?
Oh, okay. I think of two from early in our married life. Our first Valentine's Day, we spent in San Diego.
Yes, we
Not
did.
because we had a lot of money, but because the Christian college that we worked for sent us to California to represent them. And so we had spent our time there in San Diego, and we planned and we saved money so that we could go Valentine's Day weekend, which is also David's birthday weekend.
Yes.
We planned to go to the San Diego Zoo. So
I remember that one. That was so much fun.
It was so fun. So we went to the San Diego Zoo and we had a wonderful day. And then we had meal allotment for our in our expenses. And so we had saved up that meal allotment too. And we kind of splurged on supper and we went to a fun place to go. And I told him it was David's birthday, and our waiter actually, when I said, hey, it's my husband's birthday, he said, oh, awesome. He said, I do impersonations of Elvis. And so I can sing to him happy birthday with my Elvis voice. And it was so awesome.
And that's also the guy that they had a balloon animal guy that night for the kids, didn't they? And he made me this huge balloon animal hat.
Yes.
And so that was quite a memory. And just so y'all know that we were really splurging, we went to TGI Fridays.
Well,
and in those days, that was a huge splurge, wasn't
20-somethings, we thought that was awesome because you could go and get a big burger.
That was such a fun day at the zoo because we laughed and just spent the whole day laughing and talking and walking and looking. And so that was the first one. What's the second one?
The second one I remember is actually our second Valentine's Day together because we were no longer working for the Christian college who could send us to San Diego for Valentine's Day, which was not the whole reason they sent us to San Diego. But our second Valentine's Day, we had already stepped out into ministry. We were full-time evangelism, but we did not have a lot of meetings.
Sure,
so
we were just getting started.
Doing some substitute teaching and things like that. We didn't have a lot of money. And so for that Valentine's Day, we broke out the china that we had in boxes in our little apartment that we had gotten for our wedding. And I made spaghetti because that's cheap. And we had a candlelight dinner right there in our apartment. And I remember it was very sweet and very special.
It very was. It very was. I'm still sounding like King James. It very was. And I remember we had the candles and we dressed up for that meal as well.
Yes, we did.
And I remember that very well.
We didn't go anywhere, but we had
on
really nice clothes.
Our first two. We've spent a lot more money on other Valentine's Days, but those first two were very romantic.
They stuck out. But all of the Valentine's Day, I will tell you, ladies, David always does a good job. We always celebrate in a wonderful, wonderful romantic way.
And no pressure. This 29th one. All right. So people talk to us all the time about stories and tell us, this happened or that happened. Is there anybody that you've ever heard about you would say, well, that was a great story. We heard about this Valentine's Day celebration. Anything stick to your mind? I'm just curious. I didn't think of anything, but I thought maybe you would.
I don't think of anything. Most people, and this is sad to say, but most people, just like this year, Valentine's Day sneaked up on us as far as the podcast goes. Most people don't think about it until it's right there on top of them, or they think of it in a negative way. And so for the culture at large, even in our Christian culture, sadly, I don't think people really celebrate in a wonderful, wonderful romantic way.
Sure.
You know, it's just like, oh, it's Valentine's Day. Okay, let's go out to eat.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll get a little something, which, you know, is fine. In our economy, a little something probably will go a long way.
Absolutely.
But I can't think of anything where I'm just like, wow, they really celebrated hugely.
I couldn't think of anything either. I just thought maybe you would. So here's some ways you can celebrate inexpensively. Start to say cheaply, but I guess the better word there is inexpensively.
Right.
And we just came up with this list, and let's just start with the first one. All right, go ahead.
Okay, stay home for a candlelight meal of your choice.
Now, Bethlie already alluded to that one because that's one of our favorite memories of Valentine's Day.
Right.
Is when we stayed home for a candlelight meal. And we just remember that. It was spaghetti, which is inexpensive. Mm-hmm. And the candles, you know, they were just there.
Right.
And we did dress up. I think I wore a suit. I think I put a suit and tie on, didn't I?
Yes. We dressed
I
all
remember
up.
you wore a red dress, didn't you?
Uh-huh.
And so I remember that. We didn't spend hardly any money at all. We didn't have any money.
Right.
And but we did have some china, and we did have, you know, I had a suit because I'm a preacher. And Bethlie had a dress because she's a preacher's wife and a preacher's daughter. And we just stayed home. And it was so much fun and enjoyable. And I remember we made the meal together. And,
Right.
And then we served and ate it on the china. And it was just such a cool memory.
This might be a little difficult if you still have littles at home. We have done this since that time. We've had Valentine's Days at home because we have older children who can go out. In fact, next week, our son has already asked his sister on a date for Valentine's Day. So I looked at David and said, hey, we can stay home.
Yes, we have that option for this one. And you know, there's a lot of things we could say about this stay home for a candlelight meal. You could Grubhub it. Is that the right word? Grubhub.
Yes. Or you could, yes.
You know, so, you know, order a meal and have it delivered to your house. You could do that. A lot of people already do that anyway. So it's just, you know, just an addition there. If you have teenagers or older elementary kids, you could even hire the kids to make the meal and serve it if your kids are into that sort of thing.
Yes, and then have them go to their bedroom and lock the door.
Yeah, or they could serve you out on the patio if
There
you live
you
in
go.
Florida like we do.
Or if you have a nice little table and chairs in your bedroom, some people do.
I remember when we were first, we were dating, and I was working for Pensacola Christian College, and my wife was home for that summer. That was the summer we got married, wasn't it? We were engaged that summer.
I think so, yes. Mm-hmm.
And we were in Pennsylvania. Friends of ours in Pennsylvania, I was at their home because we were staying in their house because I was ministering in their local church.
Right.
And my wife drove over from Ohio to Pennsylvania to spend that weekend, and so we could kind of connect. We were getting married at the end of that summer.
Right.
And I remember they had that back patio, kind of a sitting area back there.
Yes.
And they put a curtain up. And they served our meal on the back patio.
Yes, they did.
And that was very romantic.
It was. It was very sweet of them.
Very thoughtful, very sweet, just a little extra.
And I remember their youngest kept laying down on the floor and looking at us under the curtain.
Yes, I remember that too. And she's married now, so we owe her. We need to get even there.
Oh, no. It was fine. She was being a chaperone.
So you could cook it together. Pasta's always inexpensive. My wife put that in the notes.
Yes.
And so cook a meal together.
And, you know, if it's just the two of you, you could splurge a little and do some steak.
Yeah, do some steaks, whatever you'd like to do there. But you can stay home for a candlelight meal of your choice. You don't have to fight with the crowds.
Right.
You can choose your own music.
Yes.
And even if you have little ones and you don't have the time or the money to go out, you could still serve a candlelight meal at the table.
Right.
And then, you know, if you're into slow dancing in the privacy of your home, slow dance in front of the kids. Even if you have teenagers do it, it will just such a blessing to teenagers when you dance with your wife in front of the teenagers.
Yes.
And,
well, I know our pastor's wife, our pastor and his wife,
correct.
she does a Valentine's meal for the whole family every year, and they do the candles, and she has a special dessert that she serves every year.
Absolutely.
And so the kids get celebrated, and then I think Pastor takes Alana out for dinner too. Yes.
I don't know that for sure though. But you could, of course, end it how you want. End it with a nice soak or, you know, a shower or long massage. or a gourmet bedroom experience as, you're at home. So enjoy it.
There we go. And we forgot to say, maybe you
Oh,
should
put your headphones on.
put those little earbuds in.
Because it is Valentine's Day, and
Yes.
gourmet experiences on Valentine's Day can be a good thing. Wouldn't you say, love?
Yes, they can. Does our listening audience know what you mean by a
I don't know. Why don't you
gourmet
explain that to them?
bedroom experience? Well, if you are married, then use your God-given, sacred, holy, intimate imagination.
I was kind of joking there. Now, go ahead and explain that to them. And she starts explaining it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good.
Well, I did.
This is so
in
good.
a holy, sacred way.
So you could stay home for a candlelight meal of your choice. That's an inexpensive way to celebrate Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Number two, you could watch a romantic movie together. Now, guys, I'm just going to
Yes.
jump right in. And this is a chance for you to love your wife and serve your wife. Because oftentimes men are like, romantic movie, nobody's getting punched, or, there's no high-speed chases in this one necessarily. Mm-hmm. But choose a romantic movie and put everything down. Turn the telephone off.
Yes.
Put the iPhone down. Mm-hmm. Just maybe if you got little ones, put the kids on to bed. And
Yes.
Turn the lights down in the living room, watch a a romantic movie together. And you could even do it while you have dinner together or after dinner. Mm-hmm. And then you could add, a gourmet bedroom experience after you watch the movie.
There we go. Or you could pause the movie.
I feel like I'm on a roll here.
I think so. You
there's
could
a
pause
theme.
the
There's
movie.
a theme that keeps showing up in this particular.
If things get really snuggly, just
That's
turn
absolutely
it off.
correct. Here's a couple of other, just inexpensive. How about number 3 there? Give them that one.
My husband made this list. You can tell. Kiss and make out under the stars.
Well, why not?
Right.
Some of you live in the north where it's cold. And I remember Bethlie's dad telling our children one time, they said, Papa, how did you know that Nana was the one for you to marry? And he said, well, because it was a winter night and I took her on a date and it was in Michigan and it was cold out there and there were stars and the moon and it had a little bit of flurries. There was like ice flurries, in the air. And it was just, he said it was just very romantic. And we went out to eat. And then I drove her home and I walked her to her door. And the moon was shining and the stars were up there. And there were it was cold outside and we were all bundled up. And he said, I just looked into her eyes and then I kissed her. And he said, and that's how I knew. That's how I knew she was the one for me to marry. And so that's actually in honor of your mom and dad. That's where this one came from.
There we go.
You could kiss and make out under the stars.
But you all, hopefully, the ones that are going to take us up on this one are married. So you can go a little further under the stars.
What do you mean, my love?
Well, I'm just because you put kiss and make out.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. There you go. I was curious where that was headed. And, there's a variety of ways you can even do that. You could take an evening walk. Like we live in Florida, so not far from our home is the beach. And for us, we could take a walk on the beach or we could walk on the pier.
Yes.
And, of course, in the evening time, the pier's got a whole different feel to it because you can look up at the stars and then you hear the waves, but you don't see as much.
Right.
But the sounds and the beauty. And if you live in a downtown area or near a downtown area, one of the things that's my wife's always enjoyed is downtowns at night.
Right.
And the lights, and you can walk along and look in shops and restaurants are open and there's people, milling about and walking.
Probably not a ton of kissing going on at that time. You want to keep it appropriate for public appearance. I mean, you can kiss, but
Well, what kind of kissing do you think they're going
keep
to do,
it
my love?
PG.
This is interesting, audience. I hope you're really paying attention to this.
Valentine's Day special episode is just turning into something amazing.
And so you could kiss and make it under the stars. Number 4, I just put it in there. I just thought we should.
I think you should say it.
Yeah, you should go parking. If you live in an area where you can. Now, don't get arrested, and that'd be awkward to explain to the kids. Well, mom and dad, don't be awkward about it. But sometimes, these are things that the world, jokes about it, especially in generations gone by. They go parking, under the stars or, whatever. Mm-hmm. And yet we're married.
Right.
And what a inexpensive way to celebrate Valentine's Day, to go parking. And if you can rent or borrow somebody's convertible, you could even put the top down and look up at the stars. And there's a lot.
All the people with convertibles are like, you're not borrowing my car right now.
Do we know anybody?
Oh, my goodness.
And here's a couple more for you. You could write love notes and read them to each other.
Yes.
Just an inexpensive way. And, after dinner, you could write love notes. Mm-hmm. Just sit down and do it on the spot. don't even do it in advance. Give each other paper and pen and sit down and write it.
Or make a list of 20 things why I love you, or make a alphabetized list. We have done
Sure.
that before.
ABCD.
Let's go
Yeah.
all the way through and do it that way. And it's always fun to read after that, and sometimes humorous, because we have to come up with humorous things that fit that particular letter. But
And it's always fun to come up with the Q and the Z and the X. Those are always fun.
yes.
But so write a love note, read them to each other. My wife came up with this one. You could actually do appetizers at one place and dessert at another. Mm-hmm. And so, you go one place and order an appetizer, and you could go another place and order a dessert and share it. And you don't have to go into a great deal of money that way, but you
Right.
could,
And it's even more inexpensive if you just want to go out for dessert. Maybe you have dinner with the children, and then you put them to bed and get somebody to come over and watch them for a few hours and just go out for dessert.
or if they're teenagers, just leave them at home and
Just
pretend
leave.
they're okay. And so certainly you could do that. And Beth and I, this one is not an inexpensive, but one of the things we have done periodically is do that at Melting Pot.
Right.
It's a fondue restaurant, and just go for an appetizer.
Right.
Or more often we would just go for dessert. Mm-hmm. And apparently they're pretty used to that, because when we've asked about, okay, yeah, and so they'll reserve you a place for dessert.
Right. And it's not as expensive as ordering the whole fondue experience. So
And maybe Valentine's Day, I don't know if they do that or not, because they're pretty backed with their Valentine's Day courses, but it'd be a great way to celebrate nonetheless. You could just go for ice cream or coffee.
Right.
And that's inexpensive. If you got a local ice cream shop, just, the two of you, just go out for ice cream. Or if you're not into ice cream and you like, coffee and tea, just go out to a coffee shop.
Right.
And have a time. Part of a date is just connecting and talking.
Right. And
listening.
sometimes Valentine's Day just comes at a really busy time or a really busy season of your life. And
Sure.
you're like, you know what? We don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of time, but maybe you could just super quick. You could run out for coffee, just do something very quickly. Or husbands, you know that your wife is super busy at home. Maybe you could pick up her favorite coffee on the way home. And when you get home, you can say, okay, kids, this is what you're going to do for an hour. And mom and I are going to sit in the living room and sip our coffee and talk.
Absolutely. And Bethlie even mentioned, here's an inexpensive idea for a Valentine's date. You could go to a free museum, and an art museum, or even whatever museum.
Right.
And just the two of you just go and wander and talk and walk together. But the admission is free, and it's just a matter of investment of time.
Right. I'm always amazed because we travel. You can look up free things to do and plug in whatever city you're near, and all kinds of things always come up. And sometimes when the children were little, I would do that a lot. I would be like, okay, what could we do this week that's fun with the kids
Sure.
and free? And so we would do something maybe on our Fun Family Friday, and then Friday night at church, we would mention it to people in the church, and they would be like, well, I didn't even know we had that in our town. So maybe you could Google it.
It was absolutely amazing how often people said that.
Right.
We would be in a town, in a meeting or a, revival campaign or a conference of some sort with our children. And Bethlie would do all this research, and we would go find this amazing museum or this amazing, park or whatever. Right. And then later people would, hear about it, and they'd be like, really? We didn't even know that was there. And we've lived here our whole life.
Right.
Or, we've been here 20 years.
Yes.
And so a little research into your own area may pop up all kinds of things that, place to walk or a place to visit, something that's
Right.
free. Mm-hmm. And sometimes Beth and I like to try, a restaurant we've never been to. Mm-hmm. And so you got to be careful about that, because it could turn into, wow, we're never coming here again. But everybody ought to celebrate Valentine's Day.
Yes.
I did remember one couple that told us that, I don't know if you remember this couple, they were an older couple, and they said they decided that, cards are just getting too expensive. Cards
They are expensive.
are just getting too expensive.
Yes.
And so what they would do is they go out to eat, and then they would go to a store, a Hallmark store or a Target or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then they would take a few moments and they would browse through the Valentine's card, and they would find a Valentine's card for each other. And then they would present it to each other and read it.
Then put it back.
Then put it back.
I love that. I love that.
I suppose if you're into retail, you might be thinking, no. But the fact of the matter is, that's a memory that couple made.
Right.
And just a little thinking outside the box maybe there, and a willingness to go a little overboard and just have a little meal together.
Right.
And then go to a store.
Yes.
And what a fun memory. Remember when I gave you that card? And they would just laugh about it. Here's your card, and then put it back. And now the limit to that is that you don't get to write in the card, because sometimes the card itself is fine.
True.
But there's a lot of funny cards too. We often buy, little romantic funny cards. And basically all you do is just say, love you, wink, wink, or whatever. But you could buy a card like that or share a card like that in an aisle. And I am sure, as our audience, that you could think of probably a multitude of other ways you could have an inexpensive date.
Absolutely.
I know you've heard us talk about our Dave and Bethlie nights, was our Wednesday nights when our kids were smaller and younger. It was amazing how many times we had inexpensive dates in-house.
Right.
And the kids knew, this is Mom and Daddy night. We put them to bed. And I remember more than once I'd go to a fast food store, not a hot food store, a fast food store, fast food restaurant. Boy, I'm really messing that one up, aren't I? And I know we did McDonald's, because Bethlie loves McDonald's fries.
Yes.
And so I'd run out and get us, a little McDonald whatever, and come back, and we'd sit at the table and eat McDonald's, kind of a formal McDonald's meal. And we watched different movies. We'd set aside time in the evenings to watch a movie.
Right.
We have friends that'll take an evening to play their favorite game.
Right.
And I often think of the Jacksons when I think of games, and I don't know if they listen to our podcast or not, but our friends in Michigan.
Right.
And they often will the way they connect each other is they'll play a game together.
Right.
And they have quite a variety of games they play as well, too. And I know Dave and Abby, our daughter and her husband, they like to play games.
They do.
There's a multitude of ways you can celebrate Valentine's Day inexpensively.
Yes.
And we believe every couple ought to celebrate Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And if you're not married and you're listening to us, maybe you're single. I know we've covered this in previous Valentine's Day, but don't let Valentine's Day become a negative to you. My son asking our daughter out and taking her out to eat and taking her shopping on Valentine's Day is just, when he announced that to her just a few days ago, she was so she's 14.
She was beaming.
Oh, my word. She was just almost quivering with excitement.
Yes.
Like, this is so awesome. My brother's going to take me out for Valentine's Day.
Well, she talked to him on the phone because we're apart right now. And when she got off the phone, she said, Mom, you will not believe what Jacob asked me to do.
Yeah. And so you that are single, maybe you could take out a sibling just to say, hey, let's go out for Valentine's Day, because you're my sister or my brother and I care about you. Or, take a friend, or maybe offer to babysit for someone that they just don't have any time away. Or maybe buy someone a flower, buy somebody, some of you single guys, buy a widow lady in your church a flower and just show up and say, hey, I know you probably miss your husband. I was thinking about you today, so I bought you a flower.
Right.
And if you know that they're, they love cinnamon rolls or donuts, just do something for somebody. Valentine's Day is a time to celebrate this special thing called love.
It is.
And it's what makes our world amazing. So we recommend it to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear any ideas you have about an inexpensive date. And we'd love to even hear a story about a special Valentine's Day that meant the world to you and why.
Yes.
So go to keepingityoungpodcast.com. Send us a voice message there at the right-hand corner, the bottom right-hand corner, or go to the bottom on the contact list and email us. We would love to hear from you. So thanks for listening to us today on this special edition of the Keeping It Young podcast, Valentine's 2023. And join us next week, because we will be returning to just a final episode or two of the series called Emotions and Personalities. We've talked about anger, fear, narcissism, introversion, extroversion. And next week, we're going to talk a little about depression.
Yes.
So hope you'll join us for that episode. We look forward to coming to you next week. And until then, happy Valentine's Day. And make sure this week that you serve the Lord with gladness.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.